Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times some of these things happen and it's just uncomfortable to see.
So he runs with the bosses. And the last point that I wanted to make is one of the bosses in particular, everyone knows in the industry who that person is, but no need to out him. The point is that person, along with Stephen A. Smith, ain't seeing the talent, not seeing the love for Molly Qerim.
You can't wake up and be Stephen A. It takes work. In the end, we all have people to answer to.
Stephen A. Smith is finally disclosing what initially transpired behind the scenes with Molly Qerim. It turns out that fans were unaware of a great deal of drama that was occurring, and it is also very messy. Let us talk about it, since there is still animosity there, and this may not be over yet. The dissolution of a 10-year partnership. It took time for one of sports television's longest-running collaborations to fall apart. On ESPN's First Take, Stephen A. Smith and Molly Qerim had developed what seemed to be the ideal professional relationship for almost a decade. Her calm professionalism and his bombastic energy were the ideal balance, turning a routine debate show into a must-watch television program. Beneath their on-air chemistry, however, was a complicated web of power disparities, personal grievances, and workplace tensions that had been gradually growing toward an unavoidable breaking point. Those who were paying close attention had seen the warning signs. Throughout 2024 and into 2025, industry insiders who collaborated closely with the First Take production crew saw minor changes in Smith and Qerim relationship. What had started out as casual, natural conversation became more forced and planned. A professional politeness that seemed almost scripted took the place of the unplanned moments of genuine laughter and respect that had defined their early years together. Perhaps the most telling insight into the worsening relationship between the two First Take anchors came from former ESPN commentator Marcellus Wiley, who had remained close to the network long after leaving. His study depicted a workplace relationship that had devolved into something essentially poisonous, going much beyond just ordinary contract negotiations.
One of the worst kept secrets in the business is that they have a good relationship. They don't. Right? They kind of tired on each other, etc. Not gonna go into all the messy details, but the point is they weren't cool with each other.
Viewers' preconceived notions about the First Take dynamic were all put into perspective by this discovery. According to Wiley's sources, the professional respect that had been misinterpreted as true friendship was actually a meticulously managed facade intended to conceal mounting personal hostility while maintaining the show's financial success. As Stephen A. Smith's influence at ESPN increased rapidly, the power dynamics within First Take became more and more troublesome. As the show's executive producer, he had unheard of authority over personnel decisions that directly impacted his co-host's career path, in addition to content decisions. Their working relationship was inevitably turbulent due to their dual roles as co-workers and, in effect, bosses. The degree to which Smith's executive producer title had affected other hiring choices inside the First Take ecosystem was made clear by Wiley's commentary, pointing to a pattern of conduct that might have had a direct influence on Qerim's experience on the show.
When he signs off on you, when he signs for you, you get what you want. But guess what? There's a flip to it as well. When he doesn't sign off on you, when he doesn't sign for you, you don't get what you want.
Because of this structure of influence, Qerim's career success was now reliant on keeping a good rapport with someone who had turned into an antagonist at work rather than a helpful collaborator, in addition to her own performance and worth to the network. Beyond mere pay jealousy, Smith and Qerim's financial differences had become a cause of growing conflict. In addition to being a huge personal profit, Smith's $100 million contract renewal in 2024 marked a significant change in the power dynamics of the show. It is impossible to overstate the psychological toll that this discrepancy has taken on their working relationship. Seeing her contribution recognized at about 2.5% of her co-host's pay was a recipe for professional discontent and anger for someone who had played a key role in First Take's evolution from a niche debate show to a cultural phenomenon. Throughout 2023 and 2024, a number of on-air episodes had shown hints of the developing hostility between the two personas. Smith's offensive remarks regarding appearance during a particularly tense confrontation in October 2023 went viral for all the wrong reasons. Despite normal skill in handling the matter. Industry watchers pointed out that her response appeared more strained than her typical lighthearted deflection of Smith's sporadic boundary-crossing remark. A concerning aspect of the work atmosphere was also exposed by the time and setting of these rumors. The possibility that such rumors could spread indicated that their work-related relationships had developed characteristics that made romantic engagement appear likely to outside observers, a dynamic that professional co-hosts usually try to avoid rather than promote. According to industry sources, Qerim had grown more and more alone in the initial manufacturing setting. Qerim found herself functioning inside a system where key decision-makers were more in line with Smith's vision and interests than with her own professional requirements and concerns. In contrast to other prominent ESPN personalities who had built excellent connections with producers, writers, and support staff. And so when it came time for contract negotiations, this seclusion became more troublesome. Conventional support networks that could have fought for Qerim's rights were either non-existent or undermined by conflicting allegiances to Smith's far more profitable and powerful role in the network. Qerim's ultimate departure seemed virtually inevitable to those who grasped the entire background of their failing relationship, because the foundation of their partnership had already been undermined by the time contract discussions started in earnest in 2025. The issue is tragic, not only because a great television cooperation was lost, but also because what had been a truly cooperative relationship turned into one that was detrimental to both parties' careers. Genuine respect for one another and complementing abilities were the foundation of the chemistry that had made the First Appointment television so popular with millions of viewers. ESPN's first offers were far lower, reportedly at $1.5 million a year, even though she was requesting compensation in the $2.3 million area, which would have put her among the network's higher-paid celebrities. These positions differed in more ways than just money. It reflected essentially divergent viewpoints of contribution to First Take's success and her worth to ESPN's overall programming approach. According to she deserved pay that represented her crucial contribution to the program's success because of her 10 years of service, which demonstrated tremendous growth over her tenure and her special ability to control Smith's unpredictable on-air presence. However, his evaluation of Qerim's replaceability may have had a greater impact on the network's negotiation position than conventional market forces, and ESPN's attitude seemed to be affected by reasons beyond simple performance measurements. The degree to which Smith's executive producer position had tainted the conventional negotiating procedure was made clear by Marcellus Wiley's appraisal of the circumstances. Found herself talking with decision-makers who were greatly affected by someone with whom she had grown more hostile, as opposed to objective network executives who were only concerned with commercial matters.
How did he know so much about Shannon's situation? And as soon as Shannon went through that fire, he was the first one on air saying, "Come on, man," and talking on both sides because of the bosses, because he was in that meeting. He was in that meeting knowing what the fate of Shannon Sharpe was months before Shannon Sharpe knew. Months before the world knew.
This degree of insider information and power implied that Smith's influence over hiring decisions went well beyond the typical duties of an executive producer, resulting in a situation where Qerim's career destiny was partly dictated by someone who had personal motivations to minimize her contributions. The larger budgetary limitations and strategic interests of ESPN further hampered the negotiating process. Every contract negotiation was examined for possible savings as a result of the network's rigorous cost-cutting measures implemented throughout 2025. The selective implementation of these restrictions, which sought to restrict pay increase while preserving Smith's enormous compensation, exposed the political aspects of the budgeting process when compared to contract renewals for other ESPN personalities. The difference in treatment became even more pronounced. The variance in ESPN's valuation approach was brought to light by reports of big deals for personalities who presented less popular programs, such as Mina Kimes and Malika Andrews. These reports also implied that variables other than performance measurements were impacting compensation decisions.
Think about if you're Molly, you're working at a network where Mina Kimes is making way more money than you, and Mina Kimes is the number what on what show, right? You're number 2 on the number 1 show.
Because of this, Qerim found it especially infuriating that ESPN was unable to pay her what she had demanded, implying that her pay was being unfairly repressed rather than reflecting market-based valuations. The extent to which Smith's enormous contract had skewed the show, his internal economics was also made clear throughout the negotiation process. His $100 million agreement had taken up so much of First Take's budget that it would be necessary to find savings elsewhere in the production to match Qerim's wage demands. This effectively put her raise in direct conflict with other areas of the show as operations. If Smith had pushed for his co-host's pay and used his power to make sure Qerim's contributions were fairly recognized, this financial restriction would not have been an issue. Industry sources, however, pointed out that Smith had previously intervened on behalf of other colleagues, while pointing out that he had not done the same for Qerim during the negotiation process, indicating that Smith's support for Qerim's position was conspicuously lacking despite his outspoken advocacy for other ESPN personalities in comparable circumstances.
Perkins had his deal, and when Perkins was up, remember, Perkins was getting a day job rate, and he turned that into $700,000 a year job. Perkins just talked about that recently, about how Stephen A. Smith has that pull.
The connotation was obvious. Smith's seeming indifference to Qerim's predicament was especially striking because he had the power and access to assist his colleagues in obtaining greater recompense when he felt the need to do so. Additionally, ESPN's negotiating approach exposed a basic ignorance of Qerim's driving forces and career objectives. The network's offerings mostly concentrated on increased programming prospects, such as possible coverage of the NBA and NFL, but they neglected to address the fundamental problems of respect and pay that were the main causes of her discontent. Qerim believed that accepting more responsibility without receiving the same amount of pay would have been an even worse deal than her existing situation. As a take-it-or-leave-it attitude from ESPN's executive team, the offer to do more work for about the same pay must have felt more like a purposeful insult than a sincere attempt to keep her on board, especially in a setting where her relationship with her primary co-host had grown more strained. The network seems to have set their maximum offer and demonstrated little wiggle room in response to Qerim's counter-proposals, instead of participating in the back-and-forth conversations that are customary in high-level talent negotiations. This lack of adaptability implied that ESPN had already started thinking about replacements to Qerim's ongoing appearance on First Take, perhaps prompted by Smith's comments of how simple it would be to replace her contributions to the program. However, network management rejected even these concessions, seemingly more concerned with setting a precedent than keeping a vital contributor. The negotiation breakdown also demonstrated the personal toll that Qerim's declining relationship with Smith had taken on his job happiness. Even a larger financial offer, according to people familiar with the matter, might not have been enough to persuade her to stay in a setting that had turned poisonous on both a personal and professional level.
Molly is a friend. Molly is a co-worker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see.
This description of Qerim's stance, which called for restitution for pain, encapsulated how much the workplace had devolved into something that was personally intolerable, going beyond minor professional disputes. The last insult in a negotiation process that had previously exposed the basic breakdown in professional relationships that made Qerim's continuing presence unacceptable was the leaked Sports Business Journal piece that finally led to her hasty resignation. Any chance of reaching a compromise that would save face was essentially destroyed when the unsuccessful conversations were made public too soon, forcing both sides into positions that precluded a private settlement. ESPN's largest departure was revealed by the spectacular leaving and its tumultuous aftermath. The way Molly Qerim left the First Take said a lot about the poisonous atmosphere that had been brewing for months behind the scenes. Her absence from work on September 16, 2025, in response to the Sports Business Journal piece that had been leaked, was more than just a formal resignation. It was a public rejection of an unworkable dynamic. The extent of the emotional and professional collapse that had taken place between the ex-partners was made clear by her choice to announce her resignation via a well-crafted well-crafted Instagram post rather than going back to confront Stephen A. Smith on TV. What Qerim purposefully left out of his farewell statement was more telling than what it said. Despite their 10-year collaboration, industry insiders observed right away that Smith was not mentioned in her departure statement. Successful shows were left in the wake of a conspicuous absence that went against the standard procedures for prominent television stars. Important information about the actual status of their relationship at the time of her departure was revealed by Marcellus Wiley's examination of this omission.
To be blunt, it came as a shock. I was not aware that this is something that she was contemplating doing. But in the end, she made her decision. And we have to move on as a show.
Given their public relationship and the assumption that leaving hosts would recognize their co-hosts' contributions to their success, this professional courtesy violation was especially noteworthy. The sports media business took note of Qerim's purposeful quiet regarding Smith's contribution to her career, which conveyed a clear message about their relationship's status. Stephen A. Smith's initial reaction to Qerim's resignation demonstrated his own astonishment and unease with the timing and style of her leaving. He may not have completely realized the depth of their professional and personal alienation, as seen by the sincere pain that pervaded his tearful on-air homage the morning following her departure.
The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business, but it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her, but in the end, she made a decision to walk away from the show effective immediately.
In sharp contrast to industry stories about the friction that had been developing between them, Smith described their relationship as close and supportive, given the power disparities that had grown over time. His portrayal of Qerim as someone he had leaned on seems to reflect a dependence that might not have been reciprocated. Given Smith's position as executive producer and his alleged access to internal network conversations, it was especially noteworthy to learn that he had been taken aback by Qerim's departure.
But when you have negotiations and you're talking with people and you're going back and forth and you're hearing things that you may not want to hear or feeling things you may not want to feel, even though you're valued, even though people acknowledge those kind of things, we live in a world where we have to grow up.
His bold claims regarding ESPN's stance and Qerim's decision-making process overshadowed his cautious caution that he did not know all the circumstances, implying that he knew more than he was prepared to acknowledge in public. The most insightful parts of Smith's commentary were his more general observations regarding industry dynamics and talent negotiations, which many took to be a subtle jab at Qerim's strategy during her contract negotiations. Even though Qerim's decision was impacted by substantial power disparities and professional conflicts, his emphasis on maturing and embracing uncomfortable realities during talks seemed to imply that he considered her leaving as immature or unrealistic. Smith's remarks regarding leverage and knowing one's place in the industry hierarchy were even more incisive.
We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth. We don't get to sit there and summarily say, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And guess what? I don't give a damn what anybody say unless you have the leverage to do it.
Offered the part his own enormous contract and executive power had played in restricting Qerim's negotiation position, many observers found this sermon about leverage and self-valuation, which was offered just after his co-host's departure, to be especially tone-deaf. The way the sports media community responded to Qerim's exit situation demonstrated how much they knew about the underlying difficulties, but, out of professional courtesy, decided to keep them private. Industry insiders, however, felt more comfortable talking about the dysfunctional dynamics that had marked the last years of her tenure on First Take after she departed ESPN. The most thorough public description of the internal conflicts that had resulted in Qerim's departure was given by Wiley's in-depth investigation of the matter, which included claims that Smith had contributed to her demotion within ESPN's hierarchy.
So he runs with the bosses. And the last point that I wanted to make is one of the bosses in particular, everyone knows in the industry who that person is, but no need to out him. The point is that person, along with Stephen A. Smith, ain't seeing the talent, not seeing the love for Molly Qerim.
The claim that Smith had conspired with network officials to minimize Qerim contributions was a grave charge of professional sabotage that extended well beyond interpersonal disputes or workplace issues. The level to which ESPN was caught off guard by Qerim, abrupt departure, was also made clear in the immediate aftermath of her departure. The network had no succession plan in place, even though they knew her contract was about to expire, as evidenced by their announcement of a 30 to 45-day tryout period for possible replacements. This could be because they underestimated her willingness to leave or assumed the negotiations would eventually succeed. The race to secure temporary hosts and keep First Take's production schedule on track demonstrated the disconnect between ESPN's seeming assurance during contract talks and the actual importance of Qerim to the day-to-day operations of the program. The network's seeming belief that she was easily replaceable was undermined by the show's rapid 8% ratings drop after her departure, which offered hard proof of her significance to its popularity. In response to the events surrounding Qerim's resignation, fans were strongly in favor of her choice. Many viewers expressed gratitude for her professionalism and dissatisfaction with ESPN's handling of the matter. Her resignation was purposeful rather than impetuous, as reports of possible offers from Fox Sports worth up to $2 million a year indicated that she had already started looking into other options before making her ultimate choice. Qerim's resignation had more ramifications than just the immediate effect on First Take. It also raised concerns about ESPN's environment culture and how talent is handled, especially when it comes to female figures in sports media that are dominated by men. Her story brought to light the intricate dynamics that can arise when financial interests, professional hierarchies, and personal ties converge to produce unfeasible working conditions. The fallout from her leaving also sparked concerns about Smith's own prospects at ESPN, and if his handling of interpersonal connections and hiring practices would ultimately lead to similar issues with other co-workers. The Qerim case exposed a pattern of behavior that raised possible concerns that would compromise the network's capacity to sustain long-term, fruitful collaborations with other well-known talent. The sports media business was left to deal with the fallout from Qerim's abrupt departure, which revealed the toxic dynamics that can arise behind the scenes of even the most popular television shows, demonstrating that when off-air relationships are essentially ruined by power, money, and personal hostility, on-air chemistry is meaningless. We appreciate you viewing this video. Click on one of the boxes on your screen now to view another amazing video like this one.